Why do I keep thinking the same thoughts? That question alone has probably crossed your mind more times than you've said out loud. And most people stop there. They ask it, they feel it, they sit in it, but they never go further. They never ask the question underneath the question. If I've thought this before, and I know I've thought this before, then why am I still choosing to stay here? Because that is where the conversation changes. Not at the level of thought, at the level of ownership. There is a moment, and it is a very small moment, almost unnoticeable if you are not paying attention, where a thought enters. And you recognize it, not later, not after it builds. Right there. It brushes up against your awareness, and something in you says, I know this one. I've walked this path before. I know how this feels. I know where this goes. And most people miss the significance of that moment. They treat it like a passing awareness. They don't realize that in that exact second, the entire dynamic has already shifted, because before recognition, it was a pattern. After recognition, it is participation. And participation is a decision, not always a loud one, not always a confident one, but a decision nonetheless. And this is where people hesitate, because this is where the responsibility begins. It is much easier to say my mind won't stop than it is to say I am continuing something I can already see. And I'm not saying that to place pressure on you. I'm saying that because that is where your power is sitting, right there. Not in controlling every thought that comes into your mind. That's not realistic. Not in becoming someone who never thinks negatively. That's not human. But in recognizing the exact moment where you could step out. And instead you stay. And once you see that, you start to understand something that most people never fully grasp. Your thoughts are not the problem. Your agreement with them is. Because a thought by itself has no weight. It's a suggestion. It's a possibility. It's a direction your mind has learned to go. But the second you lean into it, follow it, add to it, build on it, now it becomes something else. Now it becomes an experience. Now it becomes emotion. Now it becomes something that feels real. And then we point back to the thought and say, this is why I feel this way. But that's not entirely true. You don't feel that way because the thought showed up. You feel that way because you stayed with it long enough to give it life. And this is where the conversation around loops has been misunderstood. People think a loop is something that happens to them, something that once it starts, it has to finish. But a loop is not a closed system. A loop requires movement. It requires continuation. It requires you to keep walking the same circle. And the moment you stop walking, the loop stops existing. So the real question is not, how do I stop the loop? The real question is, why am I continuing something I already recognize? And I want you to sit with that, because there's no rush to answer it. Because underneath that question is something deeper, familiarity. Your mind is not searching for truth, it is searching for what it knows, and what it knows it returns to. Even if what it knows is stress, even if what it knows is doubt, even if what it knows is replaying the same scenario over and over again. Because familiar feels safe, not peaceful, safe, and there is a difference. So when a thought comes in that you've had before, your system doesn't flag it as a problem. It flags it as known, and known is easy to step into. And this is where awareness becomes everything. Because the second you say, I know this thought, you are no longer inside of it unconsciously. You are standing at the edge of it. And from that position, you have two very real options. You can step in or you can step out. And most people step in, not because they want to suffer, but because they've never practiced stepping out. So they step in, and they don't just observe the thought. They participate in it, they add to it, they expand it, they connect it to the past, they project it into the future, they give it more detail, more meaning, more emotion. And now they are no longer thinking a thought, they are living inside of it. And this is where emotional intelligence has to evolve. Because emotional intelligence is not just awareness. Awareness is the entry point, but it is not the transformation. Transformation happens in the moment you decide what to do with what you see. Because once you see it, you are involved. And this is where I want to offer you something cleaner, something more direct. When you recognize a thought that you've had before, you don't need 10 strategies. You don't need to break it down. You don't need to analyze it. You need to make a decision. And there are only two that actually move you forward. You either resolve it or you redirect. And if you're not doing one of those two things, you are continuing it. Resolution is not overthinking something until it feels complete. Resolution is clarity. It's asking yourself, is there something here that requires action, truth, or a decision? And if the answer is no, then there is nothing to resolve, which means what you've been doing is not resolving, it's rehearsing. Rehearsing the same emotional state, rehearsing the same identity, rehearsing the same internal environment. And the more you rehearse something, the more it feels like you. So if it's not something that can be resolved, then the only other intelligent move is redirection. And redirection is where people resist, because it requires you to lead yourself, not follow your mind. It requires you to say, I'm not going down that path again, not because you're suppressing it, but because you've already seen it, you've already walked it, and there is nothing new there. So you shift your attention, and attention is everything, because attention is what gives thought its power. Where your attention goes, your experience follows. So when you remove attention from something that no longer serves you, you don't kill it, you stop feeding it. And without your attention, it cannot sustain itself. But here's the part that requires integrity. It will come back. Not once, not twice, again and again. Because it's been practiced. And in those moments, your identity is being shaped, not by the thought, but by your response to it. Do you go with it again, or do you choose differently again? Because this is not about one moment. This is about repetition. This is about building a different relationship with your own mind. This is about becoming someone who does not follow every thought they have, but someone who evaluates them, selects them, directs them. And this is what people are missing. They are building their bodies. They are building their careers. They are building their image. But they are not building their internal environment. They are not building the discipline of thought. They are not building the integrity of their own mind. And that is emotional architecture. That is what determines how you move through your life. Not what happens to you, but what you allow to continue inside of you. So the next time you catch yourself thinking something you've thought before, I don't want you to fight it. I don't want you to analyze it. I don't want you to go deeper into it. I want you to recognize the moment, and I want you to ask yourself something simple and honest. Am I going to continue this, or am I going to choose differently? Because once you see the pattern, it is no longer a pattern, it is a decision. And the quality of your life will always reflect the decisions you make, in the moments no one else sees.